Hi guys, Rafael Marcolino here and welcome to Sapiens every week with a new video for you. Today I'm bringing a very cool interview that I did with Ray Hearne, drummer of the prog metal band Haken. Last year I did that interview with Ray in January 2019 when they came to Brazil touring their previous album called Vector. They are about to release a brand new album called Virus, and there are already 2 singles of that album released. But Ray talks about how they wrote and recorded Vector back then, and he talks a lot about his career and his development on the drums. And as I said before, I really like to do those interviews, especially with people that I like, my idols. I did another interview with Aaron Spears that I posted a few weeks back. You can search for it if you didn't watch it. But I also love Ray's playing, and it's very cool to bring information from other drummers. So this is not actually a drum lesson. I'm not teaching you anything this week, but there is a lot of cool information and inspiration from Ray Hearne of Haken. Check it out. Hi guys, Rafael Marcolino here from Sapiens, and today I'm here with the amazing Ray Hearne, drummer of one of the coolest prog bands around nowadays, Haken.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the introduction.
It's great to meet you, man. I've been a fan of Haken since 2014 when I saw you guys live first at the Progressive Nation cruise, and I was blown away. And since then, I'm, being a fan, listening to the records. I had the opportunity to watch you guys live on Cruise to the Edge on the Affinity Tour. Mm-hmm. I have the shirt. And I was hoping that someday you guys would come to Brazil. And it made sense that you guys came in this tour, as we were talking before. I got the chance to watch the Shattered Fortress show last year where the other guys of the band played with Mike Portnoy. And I remember many fans with banners and screaming, "Bring Haken to Brazil." And I was like, okay, on the next tour they are coming. So it's great to have you guys here in Brazil. How are you enjoying Brazil and South America?
Yeah, I mean, we're loving it so far. I think I've barely actually seen Brazil itself yet. We only arrived sort of about 11 o'clock last night. Yeah, the other parts that I've seen, we've just come from Buenos Aires, which was amazing. A really, really beautiful city. Great crowd, crazy energy. It was like at points in the show, pretty much the entire crowd were hitting. It was nuts. And Santiago the night before, the sort of first show of the tour was just probably even more ridiculous, just for the sheer number of people who turned up. There was about 1,000 people there, which would probably make it our biggest ever sort of headline show of our own tour. So yeah, it's been pretty special so far, and I think we kind of expected that in a way, just because of all the stories we've heard about how amazing South America is to play, and it's definitely been living up to our expectations so far, and maybe surpassing that as well.
Yeah. South American fans are really passionate, and I remember on Progressive Nation, 1 week before Progressive Nation, I think Transatlantic played here in São Paulo. Okay. And when I got in the ship, I saw Neil Morris, and I was like, "Hey Neil, we came from Brazil, and I was at the Transatlantic show last week in São Paulo." Yeah. And immediately he cut what I was saying, and I was like, "Oh, you guys are singing all the melodies and solos again here?"
That is true,
He was like amazed by how South Americans were singing every note of the songs.
That is one thing that I've picked up on as well. There's kind of, because we play with in-ears, so I think that's how they play as well. But we play with in-ears, so a lot of the kind of venue sound is blocked out in a way, but one thing that's been really clear from playing just those 2 shows alone is this constant hum of the crowd in the background, and it's kind of almost a strange sensation because we're not used to hearing such a amount of audience participation to the point where you can actually hear it
in the mix,
voice over the mix.
Yeah,
yeah, and it takes a few songs to get into. You're like, wow, they're really singing along to everything, and it's crazy. Yeah, such a loud, enthusiastic crowd.
You guys have been touring for a while, and it's probably easy to notice that every time you guys go out, the audiences get bigger, and you go to places that you've never been before. So it must be really delightful to reach to a place that everyone is singing probably every song in a place that you never played before.
Yeah,
it must be really amazing.
It is pretty surreal, to be honest. You do have to kind of take a step back and really sort of take a moment to just take it in, because it is insane just to think sort of where we've the sort of journey that we've made over the last 10 or so years. But again, kind of on the flip side, I think there's still a feeling within the band that we're still fairly early days, and we still have a lot to give, and we feel like we still got a lot further to go, hopefully.
Yeah. And we were talking about a genre that it's not really popular, right? Mm-hmm. As you were saying, like probably you have 1,000 people in Chile, and that's probably the biggest crowd you guys had.
Yeah.
And for a prog metal band, that's really amazing. You guys are in another continent, and there's 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Singing along.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I'm honoured, really. It is a true honour to kind of be in this position.
Cool.
And I mustn't take it for granted.
I know you guys don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I want to talk more about your drumming and the whole path you took to reach to the point where you are today. So how was your beginning with the instrument? How old were you? Did you have a drum teacher? How was the beginning for you on the drums?
Yeah, so I started on the drums when I was about 12 years old, and it was kind of a little bit of an accident, because I wouldn't say I was one of those kids who had this undying desire to be a drummer. Like a lot of drummers that I follow, and I kind of hear this answer, and they're like, I knew I wanted to be a drummer from the moment I first held a pair of sticks, and I was 6 years old and I just knew it.
Yeah.
I was already sort of playing the piano, and I was playing the euphonium. I don't know if you're familiar with the euphonium. It's like a small tuba. It's kind of like a handheld.
Oh yeah.
Like a brass instrument like that. So I was playing those two instruments. And I just started at secondary school, so kind of like senior level school. I saw the opportunity to sign up for drum lessons, and just sort of thought, yeah, that sounds cool, I'll do that. And was told pretty soon afterwards that there was quite a long waiting list because it was such a popular instrument. So I just kind of didn't give it any thought after that. I just kind of thought, oh well, that's a kind of opportunity missed, I'll just move on. And then maybe a few months later or something, I got a note saying, oh, your first lesson is going to be at this time. And I didn't even know what the lesson was for. It just said, your first lesson. I was just like, maybe it's for the drums, because that was the thing that I sort of was interested in doing. So I just went along, and yeah, I guess I did feel like I took to it quite easily initially because of the sort of musical background that I already had. I could read, I had a sense of rhythm. So I progressed quite quickly at that stage, and had a teacher for maybe 6 years, something like that, at school. Kind of all throughout school I was playing in various bands. I was lucky to be at quite a musical school. Cool. So there were several orchestras, choirs, bands, lots of sort of outlets for my any kind of musical things I wanted to do, whether that be drum related, sort of classical music on the tuba or the euphonium, or on percussion, or singing in a choir. So I was doing lots and lots of music all the way through school, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've then sort of developed quite a sort of broad taste in music, and maybe that's what led me to progressive music, because it is so kind of eclectic.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I wanted to reach to that point. When did you discover progressive rock and that style that built what you are playing today? And what like bands or artists were your first inspirations on that style?
Yeah, well, the first band that I was introduced to that's got any kind of relation to progressive music is Dream Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of my good friends at school, a guy called Pete Jones, who then ended up being the original keyboard player of Haken. Myself and him used to spend loads of time together at school making music, playing in groups and all sorts of things, and and his older brother had this crazy music collection, like this, just a CD collection that I'd never seen before, just loads and loads of CDs, and I was kind of in awe of it. And whenever I went round to his house, I'd always be like looking through and seeing how organised it was. So he was always introducing Pete to this new music, which then Pete introduced to me. So in a way, Pete's older brother was kind of largely responsible for the bands that I listened to and got into as a kid, as a kind of teenager. And yeah, he must have discovered Dream Theater, I don't know how, gave Pete a copy of Scenes from a Memory.
Yeah, and that was the first album I fell in love too.
Pete shared that with me, and he was like, "Oh, you got to check this out, it's great." I was just like, okay. And it took me a while to realise what he was going on about, and then after a good few listens it started to click. And then from then on I guess I must have developed a bit of an obsession with Dream Theater for sure, and Mike's playing, and it kind of sort of developed from there. I listened to a lot of sort of early Yes as well, through another friend of mine at school who was really into them. Those two bands in particular at the start. Symphony X were another one.
Yeah. Did you, at the time, wanted to play something like that? Were you hit by like, okay, I want to play progressive rock?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I mean, I would literally just put that one album, Scenes from a Memory, on every day when I got home from school, and I just play along to it.
Oh, that's cool.
And obviously it took a while to kind of rack my brain and sort of what are all these changes and
understand everything, really.
Yeah, and all the kind of fills and stuff, but nonetheless, I was just sort of determined to kind of learn this whole album, and I was just in particular the kind of, I just loved the first tune, like the Overture in 1928. I just and that was something I did kind of sort of throughout my school years. I would just come home and do loads of just playing along to bands that I really loved, and and just sort of put everything else on hold, sort of thing, and just did loads of drum practice.
That's cool. And one of the coolest things for me about Mike Portnoy is that his language on the drums are actually quite simple. He's not playing crazy rudiments and crazy polyrhythms and like Virgil Donati, for example. It's a totally different style of playing. I sense a little bit of that in your playing, and I think it's really cool. You're not focusing on, like Mike, creating the most complex groove or put the most ridiculous rudiment and application to those things. When I listen to Haken, I feel like what you're playing is just coming naturally, right? And did you think about that before when you were starting the band and you guys started writing music, and even to the most recent albums? Do you think about it when you were writing a song, like how complex your parts should be, or do you let it flow like really naturally? How is your approach to those things? Do you choose to use a more complex language on the drums or a more simple language on the drums? I'm talking about Haken, not about other projects, you know?
I think you do make a really good point, and that's the idea of sort of using a simple language on the drums, but applying it to music that's not simple.
Yeah, I mean, the songs are really complex.
Yeah.
Like Dream Theater, for example.
Yeah.
That's really my comparison, because I think that's the point that you guys have in common, you know? Your songs are complex, technically it's hard to play those songs, of course, and not just because of time changes and stuff like that. It has a technical aspect, but sometimes sounds simple in terms of the language you guys are using, especially you. As I'm a drummer, I pay a lot of attention to the drums.
Yeah, sure.
So, how was the development of that for you? Was it like totally natural? And
I think it is fairly natural, because you know, if you're kind of writing a novel, or, you know, a story or something, you're only going to use the language, the vocabulary, the kind of tools that you've got. You're not going to kind of try and create some pretense and make things more complex for the sake of it, you know, just to come across more sort of sophisticated. For me, my language as a drummer, as you've kind of rightly observed, it's not actually hugely complex and sophisticated. I don't come from a background where I've done loads and loads of like crazy rudiments and gone through loads of method books and really sort of gone down the sort of I don't know, like a lot of the drummers that I look up to who come from a sort of jazz background, for example, like Virgil, and you know, countless others who sort of come into this sphere, who have just got this crazy amount of like drumming vocabulary just at their fingertips. I feel like my sort of drumming development has been mostly kind of geared towards Haken's musical development. So I've always just been playing and practicing and developing as a drummer, kind of almost specifically for Haken's needs, rather than my own, in a way. And obviously most of that, or a lot of that, has been influenced by the drummers and music that I've been influenced by and that Haken's been influenced by. So drummers like Mike. And I would love to have a lot more of the vocab and the grammar, and I'd love to have a more sophisticated language on the drums, and I am constantly developing it, and I'm using each sort of Haken album as a kind of practice method and a development method for my instrument.
So when you're developing new music with Haken and preparing yourself to record a new album, is the moment where you can put the new things that you learn in action, let's say.
Yeah.
And are you constantly studying new things, even when you're touring? How does that work for you?
Not really when I'm touring. It's difficult to have the kind of headspace to sort of pack anything else in that's not just the day-to-day grind of touring and putting on a show. But no, kind of as I mentioned earlier, a lot of what I'm learning and practicing is often to do with what Haken is writing. It's not always the case, but so if we take the example of Vector and kind of and affinity to an extent, and less so as we go back to the earlier stages of Haken's music, the music has been getting more and more composed.
I can listen to that. It's pretty clear. One of the first impressions I had when I listened to Vector was there's a little bit of every Haken album in this one. That was, of course, it's my impression. You probably think it differently. I don't know. When we make the music,
that's music, isn't it?
It's kind of hard to watch it from a distance, right? But I can listen to bits and pieces and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of the mountain, that reminds me of Affinity, stuff like that. Oh, that's new. Of course, there's always something new.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. But no, I mean, the process of the way that we've been making music has been developing and evolving quite a lot since Aquarius, to the point where we're demoing and notating and arranging and rearranging the music to such a detailed extent that before we even record the music, it's kind of, we know exactly what it's going to be, and all of my drums, for example, are programmed. They're sort of note for note written out, including kind of the symbols that I'm using, the ghost notes that I'm using. Everything's sort of planned and sort of scored out pretty much. I had the whole album transcribed before I even recorded it.
Yeah.
And I was reading off of my transcriptions
to
record the album. And if you sort of rewind back to Aquarius, it didn't work like that. We kind of made a lot of the music together in a room, playing our instruments. Obviously there were certain sections where I felt like I had to kind of scribble some stuff down and have a clearer idea, but most of it I was just kind of leaving to the recording studio. Yeah. And I would just sort of play along. I kind of knew roughly what I was going to play. I knew some of the grooves and feels, but like it was more spontaneous in that sense.
It's just a different approach, right?
Yeah.
But what I think is very cool, today's technology allows us to do that, right?
Yeah. I think we're in a fortunate position in some ways and unfortunate in others that we're able to kind of map out exactly what it's going to sound like and get a true idea.
Yeah.
To the point where we can just go way over the top with all the details and rethinking things, rearranging things. So sometimes there's kind of almost too much information. I think it's tips in that sense. But yeah. No, I should also mention with the programming aspect is I just use it for the purposes of demoing a song. So there's no programming
on the album.
On the album, yeah.
No, I get it, and it makes our life easier, of course, because it's a complex style of music. So sometimes we have to figure out how we're gonna play in an odd time bar that we never played before, and we want the groove to sound groovy.
Exactly,
you know?
yeah.
So sometimes it's easier to sit at the computer and write different grooves, and okay, that sounds cool, that sounds cool. Then trying it on the kit after.
Exactly, right? And it's back and forth between the two constantly, because what will sound good on the computer won't always feel good, and what will feel good won't always sound good when you map it out and you think, oh yeah, this did feel cool, but when I'm actually looking at the arrangement now and seeing how it locks in with the bass or doesn't lock in, and seeing how it just works with what else is going on, maybe that's just kind of a cool groove out of context but doesn't work, and there's lots of thinking and rethinking.
Sometimes when the process is more spontaneous, as you said, you discover some details in the studio.
But I mean, again with the programming thing, we were able to even leave the drums to later in the process, because they were recording with the case of Vector anyway. A lot of the parts were recorded to the drums I'd already programmed, and then I added the live drums later.
That's cool.
So there isn't necessarily a right and a wrong way and process and order to do things in, because kind of technology allows us to kind of almost do what we want.
Yeah, it's cool to know how you guys experiment with that. Probably lots of fans don't stop to think about it, and it's cool to know about the process as a musician.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you said during tours it's hard to learn new stuff on the drums and to keep practicing, but you're playing shows almost every day. So you're probably turning to a machine of playing bad set lists, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you feel that after, I don't know, a couple of shows or maybe 4 or 5 shows, you're playing better on the tour?
Oh yeah, sure.
It's physically easier to do things?
Yeah, big time.
How does that
feel? I mean, if you compare sort of where we're at now compared to where we were when we started touring this album back in sort of the end of October last year, I remember that the first week of that tour just being, obviously I tried not to let it affect the show and affect the performance, but just kind of before and after shows, I was struggling quite hard actually, just with the kind of the physical and mental demands that the music was putting on me. I'd done sort of countless sort of weeks, months of practice leading up to it, leading up to sort of recording the album as well, so it's kind of all relatively fresh, and I knew I could play it but it's really demanding stuff for me to play.
Yeah.
And it's high pressure stuff. The crowd are kind of expecting.
Yeah, it's a high level type of music.
They're expecting it to sound like the album, and they know it's complex and demanding and sort of explosive music, and that's kind of what they want to get when they see it live.
Yeah.
So yeah, even though we were playing a shorter set over there, we were doing about an hour and 15 minutes every night. That was the toughest hour and 15 minutes to do every day for about a week.
Wow.
And then after about a week, it settled, and by the end of the tour, it was like, great, this it's still tough to play, but I feel so comfortable doing it now. It doesn't kind of worry me leading into it.
That's cool. Do you feel that when you play a live show is physically more demanding than playing in the studio?
They're quite different, I suppose.
I'm not talking about the psychology part of it, like the mental, because of course it's different to play in front of an audience, but do you feel that on stage you sometimes hit harder, or you play in a way that you spend more energy than playing in the studio?
I think they're roughly the same in terms of the energy that I'm actually expending. Like when I'm in the studio, I'm trying to give 100% to every single hit, and I always feel like if I'm not with most of the stuff we're playing, it's pretty sort of powerful sounding stuff. It is very dynamic in places, but when I want to get a really good sound out of the drum, I'm hitting it pretty hard. I feel like I've got almost two different sort of personas in a way in those two settings as well, because when you're on stage it just is different. You're performing, you've got to just sort of switch to another kind of side of you that's like, here I am, and I'm performing now, and
I'm playing for you.
Yeah.
You're not playing for yourself anymore.
Yeah, but no, in terms of the kind of physicality of it, I don't think it's necessarily any different.
Do you have the chance to play with your kit when you're touring, or you use rented kits depending on where you're?
Well, over here it's all hired.
Oh,
gear.
I see.
Yeah.
Is that a problem for you in any way? I mean, it's harder to set up and that.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward. The first show we did in Santiago, all the hardware in particular was really difficult to set up because it had clearly been used a million times, and it was just took ages to adjust anything. In America now, in North America, I've got my own touring kit over there, cool. Which is great, which Natal, very generously gave to me. And then in Europe, I've got a couple of kits as well. So yeah, as long as we're kind of touring on a bus and kind of starting from a familiar place and finishing in a familiar place, then
you're bringing
the kit's always there. And but for fly-in shows, it's not always the case. It's usually kind of hard stuff. Yeah.
And do you like to discover new bands, listen to new stuff? What have you been listening later?
What have I been listening to recently? I've recently found out about this band called Sungazer, and it's just two guys who are friends of a band that we've just been touring with in America called Bent Knee, who are also brilliant, and they're a band that I've been listening to a lot. Their guitarist is this crazy dude called Ben Levin, and this band Sungazer are a couple of his mates, and I can't really sort of describe the music. It's totally nuts, but it really appeals to me, and it's the kind of stuff that I want to sit down and try and get at least some kind of handle on. I mean, it's quite electronic, but it's really really cool stuff.
That's cool. And you talked about your early influences, Dream Theater, early Yes, and how about your more recent influences? Not what you're listening nowadays, but who are the guys the drummers or bands that you got to know, and after that first process of getting to know progressive music and stuff, that you would say it's an influence on you, like the newer bands, the newer drummers?
One drummer I feel like still needs to be a million times more well known than he is a guy called Matt Lynch. Don't know if you've come across him. He's based in North Carolina, I think, not South Carolina. I think he's in North Carolina.
Matt Lynch?
Matt Lynch, yeah. He's now the drummer of Cynic.
Oh, I see.
Although Cynic is still kind of I think they're still sort of developing new music. They've released one new song in the last year or so, I think, that he was on. But they're sort of working on an album. But he's got an affiliation with Dan Briggs from Between the Buried and Me, bass player. So Dan and him have played in several bands over the years. They're good friends, and because of that, the two of them formed a band with Richard from Haken and Pete Jones, this guy I was talking about earlier, my friend from school, who was the original keyboard player. So those four have got a band called Nova Collective. So if you don't know those guys, you should check them out. It's crazy stuff. And Matt's drumming is just mind blowing. Cool. He's so ridiculously precise, and the music of the band as well is just brilliant. So yeah, definitely check them out and check out his drumming.
Cool.
Another much more sort of well-known name is Matt Gasker, I suppose.
Oh yeah. I love Matt's playing too.
Yeah, I just can't get enough of it really. And I've recently been listening to his new duo. He's got a drum and guitar duo.
Yeah.
I think it's called Victoria.
Yeah. I know that record.
But I've been listening to the album a few times, and it's just like.
One last question. Probably the last question. I have a million questions for you, but I don't want to take your time. We're talking for a long time. Last year, you guys had a break from Haken because the other guys were touring with Mike Portnoy for the Shattered Fortress tour. And I can imagine that was an honor for you because he chose your band to be his band, and it's a guy that influenced you so much. Yeah. And they were playing songs that probably all of you guys grew up listening to and loved.
They played a lot of scenes from memory from the start. And
it's like getting a ticket to B-Dream Theater for a couple months. But of course you were not there because Mike was the drummer for the band.
Yeah.
So what did you do in that time? Did you focus on working on something for the new album? Did you do other gigs or other recordings?
Yeah, I did get to see some of the shows because a couple of them kind of happened or sort of coincided with Haken shows.
Oh yeah, I remember you guys played in Mexico, I think, together.
Yeah. But aside from that, it actually worked out really well because I had a lot of other work that was coming in at the time.
Oh, that's cool.
Pretty much exactly when they were touring. So I think during one of the tours that they did, they were doing a lot of touring at the end of the year, sort of during the Christmas period, and I had this show on, a Christmas show that was just kind of for about 2.5 months, just solid shows every day. And that was just a really big earner for me, so I kind of needed that, and I was glad that they were off doing other things and there was no sort of Haken obligations. It was just good to have some other work in. But no, there are a couple of other things I think I was doing last year while they were away. I recorded some stuff for Brian Bella.
Oh yeah, I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah.
He posted a picture of your kid.
Yeah.
Like drummers are being recorded for my solo album. I was that's Ray.
Yeah, it was totally nuts to be involved in that. I mean, at first I thought it was a joke because Diego messaged me saying, "Oh, this guy Brian Bella's trying to get in touch with you." I was just like, "Well, why is he emailing you?" And she's like, "I don't know, but you should get in touch with him." I thought, what's he bothering to get in touch with me for? But yeah, so it then sort of developed. He wanted me to record on a few songs for this double album that he's working on.
Lots of great players in the album, right?
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. He knows a lot of people.
Yeah. He was playing with Joe Satriani, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
When I saw the picture of your kid, I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Those guys are getting together, because I never thought about that connection, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't massively familiar with Brian kind of as a musician, before. The only thing I knew about him was that he was in the Aristocrats.
Yeah.
And then I later sort of delved into his solo stuff, of which he's got quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the music is awesome. I really, really dig it. And then went to go and see him play with Satch when he was in London as well, and that was great. It's just been a really nice sort of connection to make. He came to our show in LA late last year, and again he's just a lovely guy.
Seems
and
to be
a brilliant musician.
Yeah.
So, yeah, couldn't ask for more.
That's really cool. Well, Ray, thanks for your time, man.
You're very welcome.
It was really nice to talk with you about the band, about drumming. Drummers love to talk about drums, right? It's really nice to
geek out.
Yeah, to have some time to talk to an idol about that. I really like your drumming, your playing. I'm a big fan of the band, and I'm really excited to see you guys live tonight.
Yeah, should be fun.
And thank you very much for your time, man.
Oh, you're
it was
welcome.
great.
Cheers. Nice one, man.